How many of these 16 reasons that coyotes hang up are happening on your stands without you knowing? Most hunters blame the call. Most hunters blame the wind. The actual reasons are smaller and more specific than that, and they stack on top of each other in ways that no single fix solves. The dog at 200 yards who stops and stares at your caller is reading something. He is not psychic. He is reading the small things you missed. Quick honesty about the title before we start. The thumbnail says you can prevent every reason. That is not true, and you know it is not true. Some dogs hang up because they are silent dogs that never engage with your call in the first place. Some hang up because they have been called to twice this season on this exact property, and the location is logged in their head as dangerous. Those dogs are not in the conversation today because no fix on this list reaches them. What this video does is walk you through 16 specific causes I have either watched bust my stands, had explained to me by a buddy who runs predator control on multiple ranches, or pulled out of the notebook entries from stands that should have produced and did not. Stack the fixes, and you turn the marginal stands into productive stands. Stay until the end. The last reason is the one almost no caller talks about, and it is the reason a property goes cold without you understanding why. We start with acoustic problems because sound is what brings the dog in the first place, and sound is also what tells him to stop coming. Reason number 1, your speaker faces the wrong direction. Most hunters point the speaker toward where they think the dog is coming from. The dog hears the sound projected away from him as quieter than the same sound projected toward him. He reads the volume math wrong, expects a closer source than what his ears are telling him is reasonable, and hangs up at the distance where his ear thinks the source should be visible. Fix it by pointing the speaker at a 90-degree angle to the likely approach so the volume reads correctly from any direction the dog might come from. The math becomes consistent and the hang-up disappears. I had this happen on a stand last January in southern Iowa, CRP country, the timber draw and grass mix west of Albia. The dog answered from 400 yards out, came into 250, and stopped dead. He stood there for 6 minutes looking past my caller because the speaker was pointed away from him, and his ear told him the source had to be much closer than what the volume reading suggested. He never committed. 2 stands later on the same property with the speaker rotated 90 degrees. A different dog walked right into 100 yards. Same wind, same sequence. The only variable was the speaker direction. Reason number 2, your e-collar speaker has a hum or rattle below human hearing range. Coyotes hear down to roughly 40 hertz. Your ear stops at about 100 hertz on the low end for most adults over 40. The dog hears mechanical noise from your caller that you cannot hear at all. He registers the source as artificial and stops. Fix it by testing your caller in a quiet room with a phone audio analyzer app. The free ones work fine. Anything that picks up a steady hum in the 40 to 80 hertz range needs to be replaced or repaired. I lost 2 seasons of decent stands before a buddy of mine, who runs predator control on roughly 4 ranches in West Texas, brush country, told me to check my old Fox Pro for sub-bass hum. The unit had developed a speaker buzz I could not hear. The dogs heard it fine. Replace the unit, the kill rate climbed back to where it should have been. Reason number 3, you are running the same sequence the dog has heard before. Fox Pro's factory-loaded cottontail file plays the exact same recording for every hunter who owns that model. A dog on heavily hunted ground has heard that exact file dozens of times. The waveform is identical every time. He hangs up because the signature is familiar to him in a way that real prey never would be, since real prey has never sounded the same twice in his entire life. Fix it by buying the Fox Pro custom sound packs from independent producers, or running hand calls from a Critter Call or Burnham Brothers mouth call. The custom packs cost roughly $20 to $40 each, and give you sounds the local dogs have not heard 100 times before. The mouth call gives you a different waveform every time you blow it because your breath is never identical, breath to breath. That irregularity is the signal that says biological. Reason number 4, your call is too consistent in pitch. Real prey distress varies in pitch as the animal struggles, exhausts, and panics. Most callers run a flat pitch sequence at a steady volume. The flatness is unnatural, at a level the dog has learned to recognize even if he could not tell you why. Fix it by running the call manually with the volume knob. varying the volume in irregular bursts to mimic actual struggle. The variation creates a pitch artifact at the speaker that reads as biological, even if the underlying sound file is identical to one he has heard before. Sometimes the fix is in how you run the equipment, not what equipment you run. The volume knob technique is the closest you can get to a mouth call's irregularity while still using an electronic source, and on pressured dogs, it makes a real difference. Across maybe 20 stands last February in eastern Washington wheat country, the wheat field and sage break mix east of Pasco, I tested flat volume E-collar sequences against manually modulated volume on the same files. The modulated runs produced visible dogs at almost exactly twice the rate, not a controlled study. But the numbers were consistent enough that I have not run a flat volume sequence on educated dogs since. Visual problems come next, because everything you do right with sound gets undone if the dog reads the scene as wrong when he gets to 200 yards out and starts using his eyes. Reason number 5. Your decoy moves too consistently. The Mojo Critter's spinning fluff motor runs at one steady speed. Real prey movement is irregular, jerky, with pauses and accelerations. A coyote at 200 yards, the length of 2 football fields end to end, watches the decoy and reads the steady spin as mechanical. You have had that stand. The dog comes in committed, pulls up at 150, watches the decoy for 2 minutes, and turns. You blame the wind. The wind was not the problem. The decoy was running like a bench grinder when he expected a struggling rabbit. Fix it by tapping the decoy switch on and off every 20 to 30 seconds during the stand. The interrupted motion reads as a struggling animal that is fighting and resting and fighting again. The continuous spin reads as a machine, which is what it is. Reason number 6, your blind silhouette breaks the horizon line. Even good cover behind you fails if the top of your head or your rifle barrel breaks the skyline against bright sky. A coyote at 300 yards, 3 football fields out, picks up a silhouette break before he picks up your face, because the break creates an unnatural straight line where his brain expects the soft randomness of the horizon. Fix it by sitting 2 feet below any horizon line, even if it means digging a small notch in the ground or sitting at the base of a tree instead of on top of a small rise. Your dad probably told you this when you were 12 and hunting deer. The principle does not change for predators. The dog reads silhouettes the same way the deer did, and a head poking above the horizon is the most consistently busted setup mistake I see hunters make. The fix takes 30 seconds and almost nobody does it because the high spot feels like the right spot. The high spot gives you better visibility. It also gives the dog better visibility of you. Reason number 7, your shooting sticks or bipod legs are reflective. Black anodized aluminum still catches sun at low angle, especially at sunrise and sunset when the light comes in flat across the field. The dog does not know what bipod legs are. He knows that something rigid and dark and shiny is unnatural in his environment, and unnatural means dangerous. Fix it by wrapping bipod legs in matte camo tape or burlap. Spray painting works, but flakes off in cold weather, especially on aluminum, which contracts when temperatures drop below freezing. The tape stays put. I burned a stand in eastern Wyoming sagebrush country 2 seasons back because my Harris bipod had a worn spot on one leg where the factory finish had rubbed off. The bare aluminum caught morning sun, and a dog at 350 yards, 3.5 football fields out, hit the brakes and turned. I rewrapped both legs in matte camo tape that night. Took 10 minutes. The next morning, a different dog came to 120 yards on the same stand. Same wind. The only variable was the bipod. Reason number 8. Your face is brighter than your background. Camo gear covers everything except face and hands for most hunters. A pale face at 200 yards is the brightest object in the dog's visual field, brighter than the sky behind you in some lighting conditions. Coyotes detect movement extremely well, but they also pick up brightness contrasts that humans miss because human vision is wired for color, not luminance. The dog's vision is closer to grayscale, and that means brightness pops at him. Fix it with camo face paint in greens and browns and dark gray, or a full face mask, gloves on both hands, sunglasses if you wear corrective lenses, because glass reflects and a flash from your scope side eyeglass at 300 yards is the same kind of busting signal as a bipod glint. The sunglasses also calm the white of your eye, which is another contrast cue the dog reads from distance. My wife found my face paint in the bathroom drawer once and asked if I was joining a militia. I told her it was for work. She did not find this reassuring. The face paint stays in the truck now. Most of the visual problems on this list cost $0 to fix. The bipod tape costs $5. The face paint costs $10. The seat-low rule costs nothing at all. The dogs that hang up because of visual problems are dogs that would have committed if the scene had read clean, and the fix is usually whatever you keep telling yourself you will get to next weekend. Take an hour this weekend before you head out and walk through your gear with cold light. Tape the bipod. Paint the face. Check the rifle barrel for finish wear. The dog that would have hung up next time will not hang up if you handle it tonight. The visual section is the one most hunters underestimate because their ears do most of their hunting thinking. The dogs do half of theirs with their eyes once they get close enough. Everything in this video, plus 60 more field-tested techniques, is in the Coyote Hunter's Bible from Downwind Company. 229 pages of coyote behavior, science, scent control, stand placement, calling sequences, breeding season tactics, and educated coyote techniques with a quick reference card you can take to the stand. Link in the description below. QR code on screen. Scent problems are next, because a coyote's nose is his primary defense, and the one-year sound and visual cleanup cannot save you from once your scent is in the wrong place. Reason number 9, you walked in across the approach lane. Your boots leave ground scent that lingers 30 to 45 minutes in calm conditions. If your entry route crossed where the dog approaches your call, he hits your trail before he reaches your shooting range. He stops at the trail, reads it, and turns. You never see him. Fix it by mapping your entry on satellite imagery the night before. Walk in along a path that the dog's likely approach will not cross, even if it adds 15 minutes to your access. The terrain reading principle from any decent stand setup video applies here. Where your scent goes determines whether you see a dog or read tracks the next morning telling you what you missed. Reason number 10. Your truck is parked too close. Engine heat, tire rubber, fresh exhaust, and oil drips on the ground are all detectable to a coyote at 600 yards or more than a third of a mile under the right conditions. A dog approaching from upwind of your truck identifies the human source before he identifies your call. He hangs up because his ears say one thing and his nose says another, and the nose always wins. Fix it by parking at minimum a half mile from your stand, more than 8 football fields away, ideally with terrain blocking direct line between truck and stand. Yes, that means walking. Yes, the walking is the price of being where the dogs are. Reason number 11. Your clothes carry household scent. Laundry detergent, dryer sheets, and wood smoke from your wood stove are foreign smells in the coyote's environment. He associates those smells with the human source he has learned to avoid. Fix it by washing hunting clothes in scent-free detergent like Atsko, which costs under $10 a bottle, and storing them in a sealed tote with leaves or pine needles from the property you hunt. The clothes pick up the local scent profile and stop carrying the household profile. This one matters more in the early season than late. By February, most of us smell like the truck cab, and the dogs do not seem to care. But in October, the household carry can blow stands you should have killed dogs on. Positioning problems come next, because where you sit relative to the call and the wind decides whether the dog ever gets to your shooting lane. Reason number 12. You are sitting at the sound source instead of away from it. When the caller is at your feet, the dog comes to the sound and finds you. He is looking at the speaker. The speaker is on you. His eyes find you before his ears tell him you are there. Fix it by moving the caller 30 to 50 yards away from your shooting position, in the direction of likely approach, so the dog's eyes lock on the caller while you have time to shoulder your rifle without being watched. Same setup principle from the basic stand video, except the difference between getting it right and getting it wrong is the difference between killing the dog and watching him leave. Reason number 13. Your shooting lane is too narrow. A single shooting lane forces the dog to stop in a specific window. Real coyotes do not cooperate with narrow windows. They come from where the cover gives them confidence, not from where you wanted them to come. Fix it by setting up where you have 90 degrees or more of shootable terrain in front of you. The wider the lane, the more options when he comes from an unexpected direction. I missed a dog 2 winters ago in northern Michigan Jack Pine Country, the clear-cut and regrowth mix northwest of Grayling, because I had set up for a 45-degree lane facing what I thought was the obvious approach. The dog came in at 90 degrees off my expected line. By the time I rotated, I was in his peripheral vision and he was gone. Reason number 14. You set up at the wrong elevation for the wind. Cold air sinks. Warm air rises. If you sit in a low spot on a cold morning, your scent pools in the low spot and then floats out into the field as the air warms with sunrise. The dog working that field at first light walks into your scent pool before he reaches your call. Fix it by sitting on the high side of any low feature, even just 20 feet of vertical lift, the height of a 2-story house. Scent then drains away from the approach instead of into it. Quick note on regulations, since some setups involve baiting adjacent food sources. State rules on bait for predators vary widely. Hunting near naturally occurring food sources like corn stubble is legal everywhere. Adding bait to attract coyotes is regulated state by state. A 2-minute check on your state wildlife agency website before you head out keeps you legal. Reason number 15 is timing, and this is the one most hunters get wrong because the fix is the opposite of what feels right in the moment. You called too soon after he answered. A dog that howls back is committing to investigate. The alarm response trigger has fired in his brain, and he is moving on the source before he has fully decided. If you call again immediately after he answers, he reads the source as overeager and pulls up. The brain math shifts. A dying rabbit does not respond to your howl. A real prey animal does not change its behavior because a coyote vocalized at it. Your eager response says human. Even if the sound is perfect, fix it by staying silent for at least 5 full minutes after he answers. Let him close on his terms. The dog that answers and then hears nothing assumes the prey collapsed and accelerates his approach. Silence after his answer is the most underused calling tool I know of, and the hunters who fill trucks know it cold. The notebook entries from my last 2 winters confirm it. Stands where I went silent for 5+ minutes after a vocal answer produced kills, at roughly twice the rate of stands where I called again within 90 seconds of his answer. Same kind of dogs, same kind of properties. The variable that mattered was the silence. There are conditions where none of these 16 fixes will save the stand. The biggest one is a property that has been hunted by another caller within the last 3 days. The local dogs heard sequences from another hunter, possibly approached, possibly hung up themselves, and logged the property as dangerous. Walking in 3 days later with all your fixes dialed in produces nothing because the dogs are on alert regardless of what you do. The only fix is rotation. Match your stand schedule against any other callers who have access, and let properties cool for a minimum of 7 to 10 days between calling pressure. If you hunt on public land or shared leases, this is the variable you cannot control and the reason public ground stands burn faster than private. None of the 16 fixes substitute for property cooling time. The coyote remembers longer than any of us want to admit. He logs the experience and shares the alert behavior with whatever pack members are within hearing range. And the cooldown clock starts from the most recent calling event, not the first one. A property hit twice in 3 days has logged 2 events for those dogs to remember. Same property hit once and rested for 2 weeks. Logs is half forgotten. The math is simple. The discipline is hard. Which brings me to reason 16. The one I almost left out because most callers will not believe it until they have run the numbers themselves. The property has been called too often by you, not by another hunter, by you. Hunters who consistently fill trucks rotate properties like crops because they understand what most of us learn only after burning out a place. A coyote that hears the same caller's voice signature, the same sequence preferences, the same calling cadence, the same sight times across the same property, learns the pattern faster than any other piece of conditioning he ever experiences. He may not associate it with danger after 1 stand. After 3 stands in 3 weeks, he has logged your specific calling style and the property as dangerous, and your 18-minute setups produce a glance from cover and a turnaround at 400 yards. The fix is simple, and almost no one does it. Rotate your properties on a 10 to 14 day cycle minimum. Track stand history with the landowner, including who else has access and when they hunt. If you have only one property, hunt it less. 3 stands a month, not 3 stands a week. Across maybe 45 stands in my notebook last winter, the properties I rested for at least 12 days between visits produced visible dogs at roughly twice the rate of the properties I hunted on a 6 or 7 day cycle. Same wind, same calls, same conditions. The variable was rest. A buddy of mine who runs predator control across roughly 4 ranches has a rotation calendar he runs from a phone app, and his kill numbers are double what hunters on his same ground produced before he took over the contract. The rotation is the answer. The dogs need the property to feel quiet again before they commit. You need the discipline to give them the quiet, even when you want to hunt every weekend. Think about the math across a season. A hunter who hits one property weekly for 16 weeks of season runs 16 events on those dogs. By week 6, the dogs have logged your calling style. By week 10, they hang up at every approach. By week 14, they leave the property when they hear your truck. Same hunter who rotates 4 properties on a 4-week cycle runs 4 events per property across the same season. The dogs on each property log half-forgotten events with weeks between, and they keep committing because the pressure never crosses the threshold where the location becomes permanently dangerous. The math is the difference between 16 burned stands and 16 productive stands. The hunters who fill trucks are not better callers. They are better managers of the calling pressure they put on each piece of ground. Pick the 3 reasons from this list that match the stands you have lost recently. The bipod, glint, the speaker direction, the truck distance, the silence after his answer. Pick 3. Run them on your next stand and pay attention to what changes. The dog that hung up at 200 yards last weekend is still out there, and the property has not yet logged you as the reason. Get it right this weekend, and the dog might be the one that sits broadside at 150 next time you call him. Get the small things right and trust the system. The dogs do not need to be tricked. They need to not be alarmed. The hunters who fill trucks understand the difference. This is Deadwind Company.